Welcome back to part 2, my friends. Nothing has changed, everything is the very same as it was. I'm going to continue on doing more work along here and down into the sand, yes? So it's looking quite well. I've just pressed stop, I've recharged my camcorder a little bit and I've pressed go again, record again. So we're going right back into this again. There's not much of a break in between. I'm going to take some white and I'm just going to pop a little bit of white along up at the top just to catch, again, 1 or 2 highlights here and there. Just 1 or 2. A couple of dabs here and there to suggest the water turning around. And I think that's all we need on that. I'm going to go to my big brush. I'm going to come down. This is finishing here, isn't it? So I need to put a nice finish on all of this. I'm going to get some white, some phthalo blue. I think just with that, I'm going to come down, create that line going across here, look. You see that line we have? And then maybe some magenta with white, just to keep it warm over here. Now, I'm then going to soften them together, look. I'm just going to soften it together. So I'm basically continuing on that colour down, that's all. Soften that together like that. We have a nice, simple kind of colour going across. And now we can start adding deeper shades into this. I'm going to take some magenta and phthalo blue with a touch of burnt umber. I'm going to just add that dark colour in over here, in on top of that whitey shade we have, just to suggest some reflection of that dark over there. You see, just pop a touch of it in. I'm going to go with burnt umber, cadmium red. I'm going to put that in here to suggest the sand showing through underneath, okay? You can see that colour that we have. Burnt sienna. I'm going to soften it through with a touch of magenta. So to avoid any muddy colours, little hints of magenta going through the burnt umber and burnt sienna. Soften that around. So now we have the colour set up already for our sand going into that colour, don't we? Let's try that again. Burnt sienna, a little bit of magenta. It's a wonderfully pinky kind of a brown shade. And I'm going to just show kind of hints of that colour over here as well. Just hints. A few little hints of it. Just to suggest that the sand is the water is very kind of shallow in that area. And the next thing we can do then is start putting the impression of some nice foam around here and there. Let's get some phthalo blue and some white. But there's a lot more white in this. And with that, I'm going to just kind of go along and do these sort of wiggly shapes. Sort of wiggles, okay? Throughout this. You see what I mean? And especially along here. I'm going to put a very bright colour, almost pure white, just along the edge to suggest that foam just along the edge. Along there. Now you can't see that, but once the sand goes in, you will be able to see it. I'm going to start adding a bit of a richer blue to complement the left. You see that rich blue we have there? I want to put some of that over here somewhere, just to balance the painting out. Do you know what I mean? I hope you understand what I mean by balancing the painting. It's just to have similar colours on both sides of the painting, because it will look funny otherwise. If I have everything just on one side, this sort of a colour on just one side, it's going to look a little bit strange So I always bring some of that colour over to this side as well. So a little bit of magenta perhaps, pop a little bit of magenta through there. And it just helps balance the painting. You see, I think it works. It just balances it a little better. My friends, I'm going to start doing the sand. I'm excited about painting the sand. Would you believe that? I'm actually excited about the sand. I'm going to start with a nice pinky shade. And again, I need some magenta on my palette. Grab some magenta. Beautiful colour. Probably one of my favourite colours, magenta. Beautiful colour. Let's take some magenta and some burnt umber. And then a touch of Naples yellow just to soften that slightly. Let me have a look. Okay, I think I'll go with that. I'm just going to go carefully up here first, following that line that I did. So I'm kind of putting on this colour now as a general colour, just an undercoat sort of a colour. Up here first, all right. Then I'm going to start adding a purplish browny shade into all of this. So phthalo blue, magenta, and then a hint of burnt umber. And that starts giving us more of a browny plum. You see what I mean? It's kind of a dark plum. I'm going to start softening that through both sides. All right. I will put a hint of that colour in here as well. Then along the middle, we have a beautiful warm colour, don't we? So I go back to my smaller brush just for a moment. We have that lighter shade, don't we, going on. I'm going to try Naples yellow, touch of magenta. That gives us a beautiful salmon pinky sort of a shade. Would that be correct? I'm going to go with that. Magenta, Naples yellow. So we'll just start catching the sunlight then. I'm going to use a palette knife for this next step. Putting on the sun on the sand. I'm going to get some Naples yellow, cadmium yellow and a little white. And you know, I'm not going to try and think about this too much. I'm just going to sort of go for it. So let's bring that down and let's say around here. I'm going to just sort of put that on. Like so. It's kind of following some of the texture of the sand slightly, isn't it, here and there? And then a little bit of white on its own. Now while we're doing this, let's grab some magenta and some white, okay? Find a spot to mix here now. If I grab some magenta with white and a touch of that yellow, I could use that to create a little light with the palette knife in here as well. Here and there, look, just to suggest sunlight hitting in here as well. Okay, and a little bit up there. So it's handy while we had the palette knife to do this. See, a little bit of white perhaps, a little bit of white. Then we'll soften that out very gently. That looks all right, doesn't it? Let's move on to the warm sand down here. I said I was going to keep this simple, and that's what I want to do. I want to keep it simple. I don't want to go over the top with all of this. All right, because I know a lot of people struggle with sunsets. I don't want to go over the top. You know, I could sit here for 2 hours painting this, but I'm just going to keep it simple for you guys. Some burnt umber, little magenta. I'm going to paint in this sand down here. We can add plummy colours to this, don't worry. I'm just getting this sort of base colour in. This is going to be where the wet sand meets the dry sand. That's all this is. Okay, a little bit of magenta and maybe a touch of phthalo blue, touch of white. Make this more of a neutral colour. So we have this lovely colour now. I'm going to make a plum, okay, for the left and the right hand side. I'm going to soften this plum shade. It's just a dark, kind of pinky grey shade, okay? Just pick up a couple of dark colours. Now you can see it's very dark on the left and right. There's a lot of blue on the left and right hand side of this. So you just get a bit of blue. I'm going to soften it ever so slightly, just on the left and right. I'm taking some phthalo blue, magenta, and a tiny touch of white. It's all about getting the mixes just right. If it's too much blue or too much pink or what have you, it's not going to work. For me, you know, you just have to kind of practice your mixing with these types of paintings. That's what I would say, just take your time. But I just want a dark line to separate those ever so gently. Now, what I'm going to do is, with my small brush, I'm going to take a very warm pink, magenta, some white, and a little Naples yellow. I'm going to go along here and just soften that in, like so. Into both the upper and lower colours. And you can immediately see it's starting to show that the sand is wet and kind of dry, wet and dry sand. Just where the sun is, I'm going to take some Naples yellow, a little bit of Sienna. I'm just going to add that in just here and then soften it away. Just in the centre. Now we can play around with this. We can add a bit of magenta with Sienna in there, give it a bit of a warmer shade. And I think that looks quite nice. I'm going to soften the top now a little bit more into that white line. You see what I mean? Just going to really soften it in down underneath. We want all this to be nice and soft. It needs to be nice and soft. Now, how was that so far? There's one thing we need to do, and that is put a dark line in under this water here, that water line. I'm going to take some magenta with a little black. All right. Plenty of thinners. Let's put a nice dark line. Just right along here. And I'm twisting my brush now as well to get this off, okay? You can see how that makes a huge difference. Doesn't that just sit the water right down, doesn't it? It helps the water sit down on the sand. And let's just keep going with this. It may be slightly thicker in places, slightly thinner in places, but this is the general idea. Is to just make this all sit down. And I think it works, doesn't it? I think it does help it sit down a bit. A little bit of shadow here and there on the foam, perhaps. And then I'm going to finish with a very bright colour. Let's say, could be a white, couldn't it? Or a light blue even. Let's try a little bit of white. I'm going to pop a little bit of white here and there. Just lots of thick white paint. You could probably use a palette knife for this as well if you like. That would really help put thick paint on. But I'll just go with my little pointy brush for now. Now that stands out a bit better, doesn't it? Because you have a black against the white, a dark against the light. I'm going to go along underneath and soften, maybe just soften slightly some of that into the sand, just to make it less harsh. Okay, that's all, just to make it less harsh. But again, you know, you can go thicker with this if you wish. I'm going to do the same up here under this wave that's breaking, just to make it again stand out that little bit more. Now after this, it's really a case of touching up and fiddling, let's say. It's what they call fiddling. You know, you can just go along and fiddle if you want. But be careful, because a lot of the time when I fiddle, I end up making it worse. And then I'm not happy. So it's a fine balance between knowing when to stop and putting those extra few little details in. It's a very fine balance. It's very difficult to know sometimes, because sometimes you get carried away in a painting, or you're kind of locked into the painting, so to speak, and you get carried away and you lose sight. So all I would say to you is just be careful, okay? I'm going to create one or two lines across the sand just to indicate, perhaps, I don't know what it could be, just kind of general, you know, these general sort of lines that you get on sand sometimes. It could be just ridges and stuff like that. I just want to suggest one or two of those without going mad, without going absolutely crazy. Just a bit of texture, you see what I mean? Just a little bit of something, that's all. And I think now, my friends, on that, I think I'll say I'm finished, because remember what I was saying, if I keep at this, I'll only end up making a terrible mess of it all. So I think I'll just say it's finished, because, you know, I have ruined many paintings just by simply not stopping sooner. Happens to everyone. Happens to the best artists in the world. It does. I don't think it doesn't, because it does. Every artist out there, sometimes they'll overdo it, and sometimes they might ruin their paintings. Because if we don't do that, how are we going to learn? We won't, will we? We never will. So sometimes it's a good mistake, because any mistake that helps you learn is a good mistake, I think. Now I'm going to call that finished. I'm just going to stop, leave it well alone. I think I'll call it finished. Could possibly add one or two hints of a bright yellow somewhere up there. But again, now, like that, I could spoil everything, couldn't I? That's the risk. I think I maybe should just leave it. And there we go. My friends, this is finished. I'm calling it done. With that, I will say thank you so much for joining. Now, I'm still thinking, should I lighten in here slightly? I think I'm looking at it now and I know I'm going to kind of fiddle and mess with it. I just don't know, if this is a little bit too dark. Add a little bit of light pink or something in there, maybe just to lighten it ever so slightly. Is that a bit better? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe it is and maybe it isn't. Who knows? At the end of the day, it's only a painting, isn't it? Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. I do sincerely appreciate your company. And I think that looks okay. I don't think that's bad at all for the time it took us to paint it. I think that's a very nice little painting. With a frame, I think that would be very eye-catching. That will catch someone's eye. It's all about the colours, isn't it? These warm pinks and blues, they complement each other and they catch your eye. That's what it's all about. Anyway, look, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you've learned a few little things. Keep it loose. I keep saying it, I say it every time I do a tutorial, keep it loose. It's up to you if you want to go into huge amounts of detail and focus in on tiny details for hours and hours. That's up to you, that's absolutely fine. I prefer just to keep it loose and keep it a painting, because that's what it's about. And when you're keeping it loose and you're kind of going quick enough through your painting with the brush, I find you're more relaxed and things seem to evolve a lot easier on a painting when you're just being very loose. It just comes together kind of easier, you know? It's not stressful. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back next week with a tutorial again. Another one, something different, maybe a still life, some flowers perhaps, something like that. Keeping it fresh. No pun intended. Fruit perhaps. I'll see you next week. God bless, thank you for watching and happy painting.